Okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to do real fast on these last points because it's just a little bit left. And I'm just going to say, hey, watch this by Thursday so I can move on. And there's no reason I can't do that. I'm gone tomorrow. The reading, I don't think will take 38 minutes. 48 minutes. And you could do this little bit at home or like between class. I'm not even joking, after school or something easy. So we stopped at the pivotal battles of Midway, El Alamein, Stalingrad. They turned the tide of war, bloody, brutal, but essential to the Allies making headways against the Axis. Now, Germany continues to use U-boats just like they did in World War One in an effort to cut off supplies to Britain and the Soviet Union. But in what's called the Battle of the Atlantic, where the Allies use the convoy system, just like in World War One, ships that hunt down the U-boats, airplanes that hunt down the U-boats, they're able to neutralize Germany's U-boat advantage there. And in the Pacific, the United States, knowing that a mainland attack on Germany will be hard and difficult and probably not possible just yet, they will use a strategy called island hopping, where they will take these little islands that Japan had in their Great East Asia co-prosperity sphere and use them as bases, one step closer to Japan for refueling, for safety, for launching bombing and air patrol. And so this island hopping is very effective. Sometimes it's controversial, I should say. Some islands historians debate were they necessary. Most famously, Iwo Jima. So from Iwo Jima, launches could be made against mainland Japan. Yes, but at what cost? I mean, it costs tens of thousands of lives and casualties as well. And so island hopping, effective, though controversial, especially from U.S. military historians. But what is really going to push Hitler back, he's getting his butt kicked slowly and slowly in the East as Russia gets better and better. But Russia needs help. They demand someone to help on the other side. So Hitler has to fight a two-front war. And so that's what they do. They had pushed him back in Africa and began to had made some strides up to through Italy. And so Hitler's surrounded on the bottom and by the USSR. And then D-Day invasion, June 6, 1944. Great Britain and the Commonwealth and U.S. troops, they land on the beaches of Normandy right there in France. They open up a beachhead and then slowly another front. Hitler's surrounded on all sides. Hitler, by May 1945, they surrender. Hitler's killed himself. The only one that's left in the war is Japan, who will continue to fight until the end. But the U.S. will use more strategic and terror bombing, like Tokyo, I showed you earlier, but also they have developed the atomic bombs, and they dropped them on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And within days after that, Japan will surrender. So 1939 to 1945, World War, 1945, World War II. Can I go on to the next slide? Very good. I had showed you guys all this. This is a depiction of, I believe this is one of the hills, not the hill, on Iwo Jima. And you see the ships and the artillery would just totally obliterate what was left of Japanese stuff there. And then the U.S. would take it. They would usually fix the airfields, put some fuel on them, and then use them as like aircraft carriers, just stable. And the Battle of the Atlantic, you see here an oil tanker that has been torpedoed, but under the convoy system, the torpedoing of oil tankers, cargo tankers, military ships goes down because of airplanes and ships that hunt down the U-boats. And I showed you here the important battles of El Alamein, the picture here, British soldiers taking the attack, Stalingrad. Again, all these things are like for oil, access to water. And then the height of Japanese expansion, 1942, checked at Midway. And then the U.S. through island hopping, they'll go from island to island to island to island, getting closer and closer to mainland Japan. So they can safely launch from these islands bombing raids on the mainland. So this is actually Dresden, Germany, which will face heavy terror bombing and strategic bombing by allies in 1945. A lot of civilian deaths, and some people consider this like a war crime by the allies. Why did they need to bomb Dresden? Well, it was part of that terror bombing, strategic bombing attempt. But nothing is devastating, as the U.S. under President Harry Truman at this time, FDR had died, using the atomic bombs on Japan, two of them, to make them surrender. It was debated, right? Is Japan going to surrender? They have that Bushido code instilled in them, the honor of the samurai, fight to the end, suicide even if necessary. Remember seppuku, the samurai killing themselves? Well, you would have kamikaze air pilots who would crash into ships and stuff. And they actually had suicide bombers in Japan, right? Who would run up to tanks and blow themselves up and do bonsai charges where the soldiers would run into machine guns, into artillery in an attempt to overwhelm them. Again, this very suicidal death for the emperor, death for Japan. And so some people argue, like Truman, the only way to get them to come to terms is using these new atomic bombs, which kill tens of thousands of civilians in seconds. Some survive with melted backs and nuclear trauma. You actually see a Japanese depiction of the skin falling off of the hands of a young lady here from nuclear damage. So even if you do survive, you're sterile, have cancer. Even to this day, they're seeing radiological like signatures on these places near these cities. Cities, of course, are leveled and they do rebuild after the war. So leading into that, I need to talk a little bit more about war crimes specifically. So I mentioned terror and strategic bombings of these places, but specifically one of the worst industrial scale genocides, the Holocaust, which started out, of course, we have been talking about anti-Semitism with like Kristallnacht and the Nazi party in Germany, but they take it a step further. Next, they will establish ghettos in cities where Jews live. That's what a term is. This is a depiction of a ghetto. It is a blocked off, secluded part of a city for those subhumans, for those Jews. You see this sign that says here, exit of Jews is forbidden, is what that says. Huden, verboten, you cannot leave here. And so you see here walled off parts of the ghetto. Well, then they say we need to get Jews out of the cities, and they take them to work camps, concentration camps. And then, of course, the anti-Semitism is taken to a next level. That is the elimination of Jews by these are called task groups, in German, Einsatzgruppen, which their job is to literally travel the countryside, round up Jews and kill them. I'll show you some pictures of that in a second. And what ultimately develops is Hitler wants a final solution for the Jewish question. He wants the total elimination of Jewry in the world, starting in Europe, right? And it is ramped up to a full government, full industrial scale after the Wannsee Conference, which happens in January of 1942, where the various government agencies of Nazi Germany decide to take on the final solution by turning concentration camps and Einsatzgruppen full bore with extermination death camps like Auschwitz-Birkenau. I shared this clip. I shared this slide on Google Classroom. So go to the slide and click on the Auschwitz-Birkenau, and you'll see a scene from the movie Schindler's List, which tells the true story of Oskar Schindler and others who actually were trying to help the Jews. So they exploited the Nazis' use of Jewish slave labor for their businesses. Again, fascism, slave labor by the Jews in businesses who were Nazi-owned businesses, syndicalism. Not all the Jews went to death camps and stuff. But there's a clip from here of kind of the work conditions that they went through. You can watch that. You should watch that movie too. I think it's probably rated R2 just for how gruesome it is. So get permission for that. But after the Wannsee Conference, the final solution, extermination camps were gassing Jews, used to the Einsatzgruppen around them up and shoot them. That won't solve the Jewish question fast enough. So we're gassing them en masse. And the armies of the Soviet Union and the other allies, as they close in on Germany, as you can see in this map, start to discover the various work camps, slave camps, death camps, and take pictures of this because people don't believe what's going on, and they start to realize what happened. They capture government leaders. They find out exactly what was going on. There was rumors at home. Some people knew at home, but they didn't do anything. And so the Allies decide to try the remaining major leaders of the final solution of the Holocaust, of the German war crimes, in the Nuremberg trials. There's similar stuff in Japan and Italy as well, but the most famous is the Nuremberg trials, where many are sentenced and even executed for new crimes against humanity, something that you've done so bad that it's a crime against the very human way this idea, these intrinsic moral things that we don't round up Jews and just kill them because they're Jews, right? That's a crime against humanity, and the people who did it deserve to die because of that. And so you see this map of all the different camps, and you can actually see Einsatzgruppen at work. You see mothers and children running away as they're shot in the back of the head. And a prisoner's depiction later of the mass graves they would use after they would gas and kill the Jews, just piling them all in there and then burying them up. This is a bit from the Wannsee Conference in 1942. Under proper guidance, in the course of the final solution, the Jews are to be allocated for appropriate labor in the East, like in the lands they had taken from Russia and the other little states. Able-bodied Jews, separated according to sex, will be taken in large work columns to these areas for work on roads, in the course of which action, doubtless, a large portion will be eliminated by natural causes. Oh yes, many did die of disease and starvation. Many were also killed. The possible final remnant will, since it will undoubtedly consist of the most resistant portion, have to be treated accordingly. That means rounded up and killed, because it is the product of natural selection. Oh, the social Darwinism piece, right? And would, if released, act as the seed of a new Jewish revival. So we have to eliminate all Jews if we're going to take care of the Jewish question. And you see major Nazi leaders here. This is Hermann Göring, who was like the #2 guy. And of course, Hitler's killed himself or fled to Argentina, whatever. And so this is the #2 guy, Hermann Göring, and he would be hanged for his crimes against humanity. But that is it. So thank you guys very much. I'm going to stop recording. See ya.